Welcome to the Flow of Money podcast.
This is where high performance meets financial intelligence. In these discussions, we combine the performance science of flow and flow states with practical wealth management strategies.
The intent is to build a resource for those who believe that high performance mental states can impact wealth and abundance in all its forms so that you can make the impact you want in the time that you have.
Let's get started. I'm Dave Gieselman, flow state coach, breathwork facilitator, and former chef turned high performance nerd. I help leaders and creatives build clarity, confidence, and capacity, teaching the science of staying cool under pressure so you can think clearly and execute fast, especially when things go sideways.
My name is John O'Dea, and I'm a financial advisor. My love is cash flow. I truly love the cash flow generated by businesses for the positive impact that this cash flow can have on the owners, their employees, and their broader community. And this cash flow is never more important than when the owners of these businesses start to execute their exit and succession plan. I just love it all and can't wait to help. Hi, Dave.
Hello, John.
All right, so here's what I want to ask you.
Oh.
In the pursuit of high performance mindset around achieving goals and objectives, one of the things that is often helpful is we talk about confronting the stories that we have around the goals and objectives that we have. So money stories in our particulars, so we talk about the flow of money. And I wanted to have two conversations with you related to money stories. The first is the kinds of questions that we might brainstorm that people could ask themselves to help bring clarity around their money stories, that they may not be as tuned in to what might be present as part of that process. So first I want to brainstorm. And then after that, I want to talk about the impact of the work that you do mining those money stories. So if we mine those money stories and get comfortable with them, what's the so what, right? Or so that. We work on the money story so that, so what? I want to tackle both of those separately because in any goal or objective that we talk about, it is very common for the expert to say as we start to imagine our goals and objectives, we're going to hit both physical and mental barriers and resistance. And it's important to understand sort of spoken and unspoken stories or mental stories that we have about the process that you're going through. And they'll take you through a process to try to surface those. So I wanted to think through that because I heard a great question that I'm thinking of incorporated into some of my own discovery process or teaching investment education. I have a bunch of investment education classes that I'm going to be teaching to employees where I help manage the retirement plan. So employees of a company, they have access to a retirement plan as part of that educational process. The employers are encouraged, a best practice is to offer investment education to the participant. So I wanted to brainstorm with you some of the questions that we might think about. And the first one was, tell me your first memories about money. What are your first memories about money? What sort of the first ideas, concepts, memories about money? Next question was more like a visceral reaction, right up on a board or a piece of paper. I'm going to write something on the piece of paper. What I want you to do is write down the first emotion that comes up for you, not thought or plan or sort of rational, but the first emotion. And if you can, see if you can locate it in your body somewhere. The first emotion. And then the job would be to write on the piece of paper a big dollar sign and see if that triggers a reaction, facilitate discussion, right? People write it down, not to share, but to go through that discovery process. How am I doing? What your reaction or stories or comments about those kinds of questions as ways for people to start to surface and uncover their money stories?
I think they're great. I think these questions are good. Understanding that all of our money stories got written when we were 5 to 13.
Yep. I was
right?
going to say 5 to 10, but 5 to 13 makes sense to me, right? Some of that
Right?
teenage stuff solidifies and can snap that into place.
Sure,
Yep.
sure. And I think I think so the example about I'm going to say a word or show you something, and we show the dollar side, and I want you to identify the emotion that brings up. I I think those are like I qualify that in sort of facilitation as like a weird sort of trick play, right? Like let's front load a conversation, right? Let's because what it aims at, which you never get, by the way, is somebody having some outsized reaction and then not realizing how how visceral their response to like the money symbol was. And it's
Oh
kind of
my God, I didn't even remember that one time when I was 6 and a pallet of 50s landed on me. So that's why I'm afraid of 50s.
right, right. Or like I didn't realize I had such a visceral reaction to the idea of money. Like it never happens quite
Tends
the
to
way
be
the
more
facilitator.
subtle than that.
But you kind of know your money stories. Like you kind of know, and I think that the not springing this idea to try to catch somebody in this like sudden realization. Uh, I think front loading a conversation with, look, we all have money stories. We all have a relationship with money. We all have what we think money is, what importance it has, uh, how it relates to our safety, how it relates to this. And let's have a conversation about where those stories came from, how we arrived at them. And I think that whenever we want to look at stories, at narratives around this, I think the first guardrail that you want to set is, by the way, however you arrived at your story, you arrived at it fairly. You come by it fairly, right? Because the moment we go, let's look at your money stories and see how visceral your reaction is to the money symbol. Now I'm like, well, why don't I feel okay about money and all this? And did I do it wrong? Is my
Or attack it as irrational or not
sure,
important, right? Demean or pick on the story that, for whatever reason, has arisen for you,
right.
right?
And so approaching money stories not as a gotcha, but as a let's look at what's actually in this bucket. So we're gonna take the 5 gallon Home Depot bucket
Right.
of all of my narratives about money. We're gonna dump it out on the table and let's just start sorting through and see what's in here. And there and the what's your first memory of money is a really great question. I think that is what is your first memory of money? Like of receiving it, spending it, an attitude about it, a story. Were prior to you ever having money, was your parents' conversation about how everything was so expensive? Was how we can't afford that. This is so much. Was that the language that was surrounding you? If it is, then it's unsurprising that you grew up in a sense of lack, that everything was too much, that everything was the people taking advantage of the haves, taking advantage of the have-nots, of like of course everything was a gouge, everything was a why did they have to raise the prices so much? Why has everything gotten so expensive? And so really a series of questions that just kind of expose what your money story is, beginning with the absolute assertion, whatever your money story is, you came by it fairly. It is what it is. There's nothing wrong with it. The question is, does it work for you? And if it doesn't, and you would like to change it, what parts of it would you like to change? But first thing we got to do is identify what's
There it
in this
is. What's
bucket.
true, right?
What's true? And so questions like, what is your first memory of money is a really good one. How did your parents talk about money? How did your grandparents talk about money? Good questions look like, how was did you receive an allowance and how was that handled? Did you have access to cash as a child? Right? Meaning did you grow up with cash in your pocket that was your cash, that was okay for you to spend at will on things of your choice? And we find that people who grew up very comfortable with cash have a friendly relationship with cash. We find that people who, who grew up in less affluent households or less resourced households, who did not grow up with cash, maybe they received an allowance. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and so we received an allowance on paper, but our parents never actually handed us the $5 or the $10 bill.
Mm.
It went into our bank, right, which was ostensibly an envelope in my father's file cabinet with all of our names on it. We knew where these envelopes were. We knew they were in the file cabinet, the locked file cabinet, and that and we could, we kind of knew how much money was in there at any given time. However, from time to time, my less than uh, abundantly resourced parents needed to access that cash. Right. And so just handing all four of us fives and tens, once a week or every other week or however they did it was not super effective for them, and made them it changed their liquidity. Right. And so, if we ran out of groceries halfway through the week, before payday, then a couple tens came out of those envelopes and bought
Right.
milk and eggs and bread.
Sure.
So not an unreasonable way to handle an allowance for four kids. If what you want to do is let them know that they have money, that they have access to funds, but you kind of want to, hang on to your folding cash, right? Not a terrible way, not ideal, I think. But, my parents were doing the best they could. They were both the first college educated in both of their respective families. I mean, they did the best they could with what they had. Both of them came from poor families in the Central Valley, and, of Depression era parents. So their money stories were weird and affected how they treated money as an adult, which affected my money story. Look,
Right.
everybody comes by their money story fairly.
Right. Right. And just to step back, part of the, in a high performance mindset towards any goal or objective, if we're going to focus on that high performance mindset and come up with ways to tune or improve or accelerate or master or whatever language we're going to apply, we have to know what is true and accurate today.
100%
Right.
discovery first.
And judgment free, like there's no good and there's no bad. We just want to know, as you describe, emptying it out on the table to see the collection of tools and resources that we have available to us today, and to pick and understand that each one, right, each different component, not to place judgment on it, but to make sure that we are aware of what's present today so that we don't pour gasoline into an engine that's already broken, right? That is grinding itself slower despite, it's in reverse, as, to finish that analogy. So just to step back from a processing standpoint, we're trying to get a clear about some of the things that if we want, money or wealth or financial resources as a goal, point A to point B being a better, more abundant financial state, right? And we believe that high performance mental states will improve whatever tools we apply. High performance mental thinking is going to accelerate, shorten the process to achieve there. We got to understand what's true in that set of tools from a mental standpoint first.
100%. So going into like a really good discovery looks like,
And what do we, yeah, I mean, so like in the discovery process, whether I'm doing it on myself as a listener or I'm teaching somebody, facilitating a discussion, what are they listening for?
so I am listening for, so, we've listed a few of these questions so far, like what's your first money memory? How did your parents treat money, talk about money? How did your grandparents treat money, talk about money? What was the sense of lack or abundance in the house that you grew up in? Was everything, did everything always feel tight? Was everything always too expensive? Was the consistent story, we can't afford that? Was all the conversation around what we can't afford? Or was there, even in environments where there isn't abundance, was there this abundance mindset? Let's figure out how to make that happen. If we need to do this,
I don't know how to get there, but you just laid out a goal. Let's figure it out.
we can figure it out. How do we achieve that? How do we achieve that goal rather than, no, you can't have that. We can't afford that. That's too much. I can't believe they're charging that much for that. And so being able to identify, do I hold an abundance or a scarcity mindset? Like, where's my mindset around that? We can ask questions like, when you first started having sort of regular access to cash, and some of us, as kind of teenagers, that birthday money started rolling in, or we got those jobs, or started mowing lawns or washing cars or doing whatever we did because we entered an age where having some resources that belonged to us, that were on our person, suddenly became important, and how we were going to get those resources, how we thought of those resources, how we thought about that money. Did I have to work for it? Was it gifts? Was it simply available to me by default of who I is? Hey, Dad, can I have $20? Right? If was there a drawer full of money somewhere that you simply had access to? Not uncommon, maybe not the healthiest way to go, but it's also certainly not uncommon.
Or at least the knowledge that if I asked, it was fine, right?
Yeah,
That
it was fine.
wasn't
Asking for money was
scary.
fine.
They didn't have energy. Hey, I have this need. Awesome. Let's talk about it. It's not in my pocket, but it's not that I can't
Sure.
figure out how to make that available, right?
Right. Was there an exchange? Like, if I needed money, once again, when I was growing up, I knew that if I needed money, I could exchange labor for money with my parents. I could wash cars, I could mow yards, I could do all kinds of things. I could exchange labor for cash, right? And that was from the time I was young. Like, there was a work ethic. Like, you can work for money. You could, if you what you want is money, here's a list of things that you can do that will put folding
you
money
deliver value to somebody else,
right?
They may voluntarily part with their resources in exchange for that value.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Get paid. And so when you first started having access to cash, to resources, how did you spend it? Right? Did you get your grubby little hands on $5 and then immediately turn that into $5 worth of candy, which you then consumed immediately? Or Did you get your hands on $5, which you went to Smart and Final with, bought a box of blow pops that you then went to school with and sold for 50 cents a piece and turned your $5 into $20, right? And by the way,
Yes.
in
Yes.
junior high, blow pops in high school turn into other currency, right?
That's a different, this is supply and demand, right? This is being present for those sorts of
Opportunities,
resource gaps,
right?
right? Desire, availability, resource gap is filled by the creative entrepreneur.
Right. And so was there a barrier to money, or was access to it something that could be gamed, right? Gamed for good or for bad, gamed uh for better or worse morals, like could access to resource be gamed in some way? Could I work for it? Could I trade? Could I, did we discover the value of baseball cards? I realized that I had a rookie, a rookie Steve Garvey, and realized that I could then turn that into a $25,
Sure.
that came in the quarter pack of baseball cards that I bought at one point, and now realize that I could turn this baseball card into $25. So learning about the storehouses of value, right? And so how did your relationship with money develop, right? And so all of these things contribute now to your money story. When I work with clients, one of my primary questions is, do you live in an abundant universe that is actively conspiring in your favor, or do you not? Right. And it's a really important question for me. I don't work with people who do not live in an abundant universe that is actively conspiring in their favor, because those people have abundance mindsets. Uh, the people who do have abundance mindsets, the people who don't have scarcity mindsets. And I learned that people who have scarcity mindsets will argue every dime with you. Everything is about, how do I get more? It's a pie.
Right.
And the whole
There's
question
a
is, how
fixed
do I
universe
get
of resources. If I get more, somebody gets less.
right?
Right.
Right.
It is forcibly removed from the storehouse of value of somebody else for me to get it. Right. It's carved off of somebody else's, their storehouse of value is depleted when mine is increased in some capacity. The fixed mindset universe. There is some sense of that fixed mindset. If I'm remembering correctly, some of the writers in this space, fixed mindset also applies to skills and capabilities. Like you're either born smart or you're not, right?
Right. Well,
And
fixed mindset is a belief about the universe, right? And so I will point out that it's interesting, your example about that, right? Your example, which is very telling about perhaps old or current money stories. uh Somebody has to lose in order for me to gain, right? And so your relationship, like with that belief, is that must be taken, whereas other people, in the example I'll give, like the teeter-totter sort of example, is other people believe that uh in order for somebody else to succeed, they will be taking from me. Right. And so I can see where, just in your language, where your concern is with other people, with you coming up at somebody else's expense rather
right.
than somebody else's success robbing you.
Even the filter of my example that I'm running it through is a me win, others lose, versus the filter could just have been in the same example. Fixed mindset is still the same. When I say for somebody else to win, it's stolen from me, right? It's a very personal fear based, don't take mine,
Yeah. Right.
right?
And it's now
Filter that I'm passing things through, right? Where even in coming up with the example, I'm describing my own, you know, lean in seeing the universe. I want to succeed. And so the example that I draw is for me to succeed, somebody else has to lose as an example of what a
As an
fixed
example,
mindset might be. Despite the fact that I do believe that value is created in a fashion where value wasn't there before. Like creators authentically create, they take the energy of the universe that is already present and they're creating value in a fashion that everybody wins. There are definitely processes that are a fixed mindset value creation process that I don't find are sustainable or healthy in a long-term fashion. But I do find that in a lot of instances, a scaling positive effect of work that people do, is not necessarily falls into the fixed process, right? That
right. But let's go
So
back to that
anyway,
just for a second, because I want to show how that can affect high performance, right? So I thought it was really good. So you were asked to think about fixed mindset, and what you went to, which probably reflects old beliefs. Like if I had to apply my beliefs to a fixed place, if I were to succeed, somebody else would have to lose rather than anything else. So if you are a person of a fixed mindset and you believe that in order for me to succeed, somebody else has to lose, you are likely to block your own success out of fear that you are taking from somebody else, right? If that is simply the way that you see it, like my success is removing from somebody else. Somebody else has to lose in order for me to succeed. And if you have sort of moral, philosophical, ethical challenges with that, rather than addressing whether you believe that's true or not, what you will do is simply block your own success,
sure.
believing in a different direction in order for somebody else to succeed. Like somebody else's success actively takes away from me resource, opportunity, whatever. Then what you end up with is an equal block to high performance, which is like haterism. Like I hate people who I see succeeding because I see that their success takes from me. And so I sabotage, directly or indirectly. I poo-poo success, other people's success. I will downplay it. I will do all these things because I believe that your success removes opportunity and resource from the pool in which I am trying to extract. Right. And so both of these are blocks to high performance.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So
I mean, you can see it in a bunch of different contexts, like in promotion, right? Promotion or advancement to the highest levels in any field, there are not that many spots near the top, right? So in the military, it's very classic that, you have so many at one class and a narrower range at the next class. And then there's only one, head of the joint chiefs, right? There's only one person, right? Again, it quickly narrows. Like if we can successfully manage 7 people, the reverse is also true. Like if I want the next person's job, 7 of us may be competing for that's a, 49-7-1 ratio to run an organization, right? Same is true in professional athletics. If you're a good high school player, there's a very big narrowing that happens between you and a paid relationship with your chosen profession, right? If you want to be Major League Baseball or football or basketball or whatever it is, there's just not a lot of spots. So I can imagine it's very tempting to say, hey, that's all well and good. And in my chosen field, for me to advance, somebody's got to die, right, for a spot to open up. Like, the Union Stevedore in Oakland has been in the spot for 30 years. Another spot doesn't open up until he retires or dies. Right. And then there's going to be 50 of us, all with the similar tenure and skills and capabilities. Like that can turn very negative very quickly, right? To tear others down to try to advance your own cause. in that case.
unless you believe in unless you have an abundant, non-fixed mindset,
Hmm.
right? Which means that supporting me supporting you benefits me. That me cooperating with you benefits me because the example is the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? Um, you know, uh, because I live in LA, let's talk about Shohei Ohtani for a second.
Right.
Right? Shohei Ohtani, okay, if you hate Shohei Ohtani for his success, you have some deep reflection that you need to do about yourself. Like
Fine.
like if you are angry at Shohei Ohtani for being the best that has ever played the game by any metric, period, full stop. If you are mad at him or the Dodgers for that, right, then
I
perhaps
can
some
still be mad at the
reflections.
Dodgers, can't I? Like,
The
as of
Angels
the
could
day
have
of the,
the Angels could have just paid him what he asked for. They had the money, and they could have just. And when they said no, he's like, "Oh well, then I'm going to go to who will." And he lifted the entire team. His professionalism, his dedication, I I live in LA. I'm going to talk about Kobe. I'm going to talk about Jordan, right? The people whose dedication to what they did lifted every single person around them. I mean, yes, while there are only so many spots on the team that get to play with Jordan, right? Jordan's presence made more of that available to many more people,
sure.
right?
Sure.
And
There's a
so,
story of the Golden State Warriors entering into their golden age and their 3, 4 top stars, right, at the time, voluntarily choosing to work collaboratively to reduce the amount that they personally pursued advancement from a financial standpoint to free up room for another star to join. Right. And the story that I remember at the time was Kevin Durant, right? That Steph Curry and his buddies on the team all went to Durant and said, "We love you so much. We align. There's a lot of value here, and we'd be willing to step back in our own financial pursuits to make room so that you could be here in this process." Right. So there are places in that we find where it can be easier to be fixed mindset, and you still find stories, right? Characters who are leaning into the abundance side of what is present there.
right.
Understood.
And so, yeah, and while there seems to be fixed opportunities, they're really not, right? There's really not. Because when we succeed, other opportunities spontaneously emerge, right? The top guy in so you use the military example.
Yep.
The top guy in the United States Space Force did not begin in the Space Force as a buck private. He was a Air Force general or an Air Force, like probably 1-star, 2-star general who was never going to go farther than that in the Air Force. Just his pathway to further advancement was blocked by people who were going to die before they,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and all of a sudden the Space Force opens up that needs a brand new set of top brass. So the guy sitting at the very top of the Space Force, there's nowhere in the Air Force left for him to go. But this whole opportunity with the Space Force opened up. And if he would have stopped and gone like, there's nowhere to go. I can't. Now I'm just going to start trying to tear down these other generals so that I
Sure.
can
So that there's
advance.
a spot for me. Right.
Yeah, right. And so
Okay.
the
So the fixed versus abundance mindset, right? And understanding our potential leaning, right? What's present in our tool set? What color is that tool? Is it a abundance tool? Is it a fixed tool? So that you were starting to tease out and starts to get to the so that question, my second question. Right? We've talked about brainstorming a lot of these questions. Origin story, right? Our money origin story, some of our behavior example stories, right? To starts to collect and begin to appreciate what are the tools that we have to work with related to money in particular. Are there notions and ideas? What we're listening for are things that might show up in the so that category, right? So that we might, it sounds like high performance mindset. We do this work to some degree and it's probably never over, but that's going to make me mad. I want to be fixed. I thought this was going to fix me. I thought I was going to do it once, so that we might be better at predicting when the surprises, challenges, and problems come up in our pursuit of state B. We're at state A today. I'd like to be at state B. We're going to draw a straight line from A to B. But the work that we do starts to potentially lend itself to say, awesome, we can get you to B. Let's do some work to figure out where are the likely obstacles, roadblocks, pitfalls, landmines that are unique to every individual, right? And time frame that you're pursuing, where are the likely, so that you can develop strategies to be ready when it happens.
Right.
Is
I
that
think there's
the
I think
point of
there's
the
another
work?
step. There's another
Okay.
step in there, right? And I think this is where it's important, and I think this is where a lot of people skip over this, and I think it's important. So we start asking all these questions, and
Yes.
we
You made me feel uncomfortable. I'm talking about my childhood, blah, blah, blah. Fine. I don't want to stare at my navel too long, but I did it.
but now looking at these answers, right? Now looking at these answers, so now examining them, when you got the example, when you got that $5 bill in your hand for your birthday, did you turn it into $5 worth of candy immediately? Did you then consume it all? Right. And the question is, why? Like like what was the compelling need to immediately consume that $5?
Okay.
Right. So what drove that? Why is kind of a terrible question. I almost never like the question why. Tell me about what drove that behavior. Like what turned a $20 bill into $20 worth of gum? Like what was that process? And for some, it looked like I never knew where more was coming from. And so, and there was nothing I could have in my possession that couldn't be taken away from me. So if I were to immediately consume it, right? If I were to
You
take that
couldn't take it
$5,
from me.
you
Right?
couldn't take it from me. I now,
If I ate it or gummed it or video gamed it or
video
whatever it
gamed it
is,
quarter by quarter into a thing. If
then
I
I was
consumed it,
ensured the opportunity to experience it and it couldn't be stolen.
right. And regardless of whether that was money, that was a number on an envelope, like was my case, it was, whatever it was. And we watched the same humans who turn the $5 they found in a gutter into $5 worth of candy. And an hour later, that $5 worth of candy is completely consumed, rather than the human who finds $5 in the gutter, and then that just goes into a box on a desk somewhere to be forgotten about, or into a piggy bank, or into whatever. These are the same people who at 18 get their first credit card and then treat it like free money. Right? It's the same people who, the minute I have access to what I believe are resources, and because I have an imperfect understanding of what resources are, what debt is, what all these things, because if this is where you come from, you probably don't have a real high level of financial literacy, right? You don't have a real high level of that, then getting into then the consumption becomes the thing that is valuable, not the money. Then when we get older, being seen consuming becomes the thing that is valuable, right? I want to be seen driving the expensive car. If you ask me what my car payment is, and I tell you my car payment is $7,500 plus insurance, $7,500 a month plus insurance, and they go, awesome, how much do you make? $55,000 a year.
A mismatch.
It's a mismatch. But what's really what is valuable to me is being seen consuming at this level, because if I am seen consuming at this level, so understanding what the stories are, understanding what behaviors those stories drive, and what outcome those behaviors produce. And now we can go and now we can take that set of data, strip away good, bad, right, wrong, right? Take away all of the judgment, all of the this shouldn't be that way. That's a dumb way to do that. That's that's not the way you're supposed to, right? They've heard that shit before. It doesn't matter. But go, awesome. So we see where your stories come from. We see the behaviors that these stories correlate to, and we see the outcomes that these behaviors correlate to. Looking this entire data set. So now we've done a complete discovery. And then we begin asking the question, one by one, does this work? Not is it good, is it bad, is it right, is it wrong? Is this working
Effective.
for you?
Right.
Is it going to take you from state A to state B? Is there a faster path from state A to state B, adjusting these behaviors, which means you need to adjust your story, which means you need to reconsider all of these things. But having them all laid out, understanding where my stories came from, and we can look at the stories and go, do I still want to operate with this story in play? Do I like the behaviors that are driven by this story? Do I like the outcomes driven by this behavior? And if the answer is no, then we can draw the line all the way back and go, oh, maybe this story doesn't serve me. Maybe this is, and there are ways that we can begin to we can subject these stories to inquiry, right? And then we can go back to the story. And so if we want to change the behavior, we got to look at the story. And so by looking at the story, we can begin asking the question, is this story so now having a complete discovery, then we can move on to question 2.
All right. So taking back through, so the hallmarks then, in summary, end of the chapter, the hallmarks then of complete discovery would be a series of inventory taking questions, right, to produce the kinds of stories that affect this particular domain that you're interested in: money, wealth, abundance, resources, making money, spending money, all of the stories that might be present that may have some tangential effect on money, right? Origin story, early behavior choice stories, as you sit through that process. Then, so the inventory. The second is an interpretation of the effect, right? The behavior that story then tends to support, the outcomes or the behaviors
Driving.
that it's
right?
currently driving.
The behaviors that those stories are currently driving. So we understand your stories came from, you came by your stories fairly.
Right.
What behaviors are those stories currently driving? Do you spend everything you make? Right? Do you spend more than you make? Are you $80,000 in credit card debt?
And then is that
working for you?
effective?
Yeah.
right? Is that an effective story? Is that effective in helping to support your efforts in achieving the goals that you say you want to achieve?
Right. Right. And
So
so
stories, behavior,
outcome.
um, outcome analysis, right? Outcome interpretation, outcome effectiveness rating.
Right. Right. Do I like the outcome of my behaviors? Do I like where this puts me? Right. And more often than not, like let's be honest, the answer is no, but I don't know how to stop doing that. Right? No, I know I see that I do that.
Right.
I see that I do that and I don't know how to stop doing it. Like, and this is as a coach, as a, you know, this is the challenge. This is what clients come to me with. I see I do
Yeah,
this
it's a
and okay, cool. So stop doing that. Can't stop doing that. Okay, do you like
doc,
the
my arm hurts when I go like this. Then don't go like this.
can't I need to I have a story that right. And so, do you like the effect produced by that behavior? No, not at all. Awesome. Well, the only way to not to stop that outcome is to change that behavior. Can't change that behavior, don't want to. Well, you're paying me a lot of money for an outcome that's now not going to change. And unless what you are paying me for is to co-sign your inability to change and, cut me a $10,000 check, I'll do that right now, save both of us a bunch of time, right? Or we can go, right? What's driving it? Why can't you change? Like what's the deal? And I just got off a call with a guy who, is in a pattern that he doesn't want to be in, right? And we talked about the 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 familiar hell that humans will always choose over the unfamiliar heaven, right? I see the place that I want to be, but this is I am choosing to be in the thing that at least it sucks, but at least it's unknown. At least it's a known. I am in control of this. I can sort of I can game it. I can use it. I am in control. I know it is a known quantity that produces X amount of misery and I am more comfortable dealing with this known quantity that produces an X amount of misery than an unknown quantity with unknown results.
The uncertainty, the fear uncertainty link, right? The fear uncertainty link for a potential branch in the road, right? Decision point, branch in the road, fear uncertainty link, reluctant to take the untraveled path for it could be worse than this. At least I know what this is.
100%. And that's where we get into the meaning making, the danger sensing that is built into the human psyche. Human beings collect 9 pieces of negative information,
Right.
including stuff they've made up, right,
Sure.
to 1 piece of positive information
Right.
because the positive stuff doesn't kill you, right? So the humans that have survived over the millennia are the
Wired for
ones
this.
who are suspicious and skittery and and nervous minded
Right.
and distrustful of the unknown. That's the group that survived. Once again, you arrived at it fairly, but are the things that used to kill us still going to kill us? What is what does failure look like today differently than it looked 1,000 years ago? Right? 1,000 years ago, failure looked like death. Right? Today, failure looks like "Pff, now I got to start that over. Right? Now I got to start rebuilding a life, a portfolio, a whatever, a reputation, a whatever. Failure doesn't look like getting eaten by wolves anymore. Right? But the problem is, it takes millions of years for our nervous system to evolve it's taken a couple thousand years for our society to
To
evolve.
have abundance such that we're not dying at 30, physically fertile at 14, right? Because we're dead at 30.
Right. Right.
We don't really need a fully formed, you know, executive functioning center of the brain, not a requirement to survive.
Right. Right.
Right. So then that practice of the story behavior loop, right? Figuring out the strategies to decouple that in a fashion where it unloops in some fashion where there is a new path that you get to experience if you can figure out how to decouple that story behavior loop.
100%. Let me be very clear. This neither happens in a vacuum, nor does it happen in isolation. You are
Sure.
not going to sit down at a table with a scratch pad and do this on your own. Human beings are terrible at self examination.
I have a mirror. Can I just look at my belly button with the mirror?
Let me know how effective that is on the far side of that. 100%. Do what you feel is right. Like, run the experiment. The most
Right.
common advice, the most common guidance I have ever given clients or my son
Try it out.
is try it out. Run the
Try it out.
experiment. Let me know how that goes. Look, if it's a good decision, you will have your experience, you will learn, you will grow, and that experience will inform future decisions. If it's a terrible experience, you will have your experience, you will learn, you will grow, and that experience will inform future decisions. The biggest challenge that we face, is this, I'm afraid of doing it wrong. I'm afraid of making a mistake. And the problem with that is that nothing good happens when you're comfortable. Nothing good happens from a comfortable place, right? In order to get stronger, you must tear muscle. In order for plants to grow, they must be distressed. In order to grow, growth requires distress. It requires resistance, something that must be pushed through, something that must be overcome. Lifting, you don't get stronger by lifting weights, you tear muscle by lifting weights. You
Right.
get stronger in recovery when you are now sleeping right, eating right, and getting enough sleep, doing good recovery processes, getting the vitamins, the minerals, putting the nutrient back in that enables the muscles to regrow stronger than they were before you tore them. Growth happens only in the face of adversity.
The change, this is often where people, they won't experience the change, right? Until the trauma creates the process and then the change happens in the recovery, right? And they've hit bottom in some
Right.
capacity.
But
and
I
change
want
is
the
then
change, but I
required.
don't want the trauma. Like, I want the change, but I don't want to tear the muscles. That working out hurts, right?
Can I
I'm
just have the
sore for
pill?
day
Where's
after.
the pill?
Where's the pill? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see this financially all the time, right? It's
In
crypto,
money
it's day
stories,
trading,
money
it's
process, right? I think as we've talked, I mean, the simple formula, right? You have to earn money that you don't spend, right? And for many people,
painful.
that is painful, right? That's sacrificing and choosing to endure a lack or you know, a, gap in experiences or a lack of dopamine surge that you get from the spent, right? I mean, all the different, like, money that you made that you bought something else with, right? You bought a more secure financial future with those resources rather than a set of car or tool or a vacation or whatever you felt entitled to experience above a certain threshold. Um, right? That, reframing is a painful process. Money that you made that you voluntarily choose not to spend means that you probably have to cut your spending, which means that You're doing stuff that you didn't want to do. You're cooking for yourself more, you're traveling less, you're buying less, you're, experiencing less. There's some gap in your felt experience that some experience that you have today that needs to change such that it opens up the margin for the capability to buy that future self that you said that was important. And it's painful, right? It's super painful. It's, the behaviors, right, are painful, right? You do them poorly, you start slowly, lots of what feel like failures, right, to try it out. Um, and you use this term a lot, like get started doing it poorly.
Sure. Sure. Because what is failure, right? And I tell you, I ask so many people this: what would failure actually look like? Like what is failure? Like let's define what failure would look like. And once you start getting into it, everything kind of starts ringing kind of hollow and weird. And what we eventually get down to is letting down the people that are most important to me, right? And I have to ask time and time again, is watching, letting down my partner, my children, putting them in a tougher financial situation than I wanted to because I attempted something that didn't work. So the question I will always ask then is letting your family down, does that look like failing at trying to give them something bigger and having to start over 8 times in order to give them the things they want, and then watching you time after time after time go, "No, I this is the life that I want you to have, and I am going to do whatever I have to do to build it, and if that's experiencing some failure, then great." Or is letting your family down never reaching into your capacity and allowing just our sort of wherever we're at to be enough? Is that letting you never reaching your capacity, and by extension modeling not reaching your capacity to your children, who will never do what you tell them to? They will absolutely do what you model. So if you are modeling playing small, staying scared, staying quote unquote safe, and never really taking those risks, never really stepping past your comfort zone for the opportunity to do something great, isn't that what really letting your family down is? What isn't that really what that is never giving your potential like a real shot, right? And if you absolutely knew, like absolutely, and I just had this conversation, if you absolutely knew that success was 4 completely humiliating, abject failures away, how little would you care about those and how fast would you attempt to bring them? Like, if
Right.
you knew that everything that I want for myself, for my family, for my future, if I knew that that was only 4 completely humiliating, abject, catastrophic failures away, would I care about them? Or would I race toward them and celebrate each one with glee as I ticked it off? There's another one, you know, boom, 2 to go, baby, right? 2 to go. All I need is abject humiliation and catastrophic failure 2 more times, and then I hit success. Bring it. As a matter of fact, stack them up. How can I do 2 a days? Like, how can I bring this faster? Right. And I'm not sure if that number is 2, 1, 4, 10. I am absolutely certain that where you are today is waiting for you in 10 years if you do nothing.
Yeah. I mean, the path that you're on, right? The known, right? Back to our early,
The
right?
known pain, right? The known
The,
hell.
the known problems, right? We could definitely experience those known problems over and over for the next 10 years. right? Or you get to pick whether you want the potential upside, right?
right?
You
And
get to pick.
and you know, and I didn't invent this, right? Choose your hard, right? Pick your hard. Uh, Working hard is hard. Taking risks is hard. Uh,
Experiencing this discomfort that you say you have in your current state.
is hard. Exercise is hard. Saving away for a future is hard. Uh, Dying hungry and penniless is hard. Dying of health complications because you never
Right.
exercised once in your life is hard, right? Like eating cat food and pushing a shopping cart because you didn't put a single thought into anything farther than the day after tomorrow is hard. Choose your hard. You have the opportunity today to choose your hard. There
Right.
is no easy. Nobody has it easy. As a guy who works with billionaires, I can assure you
It
nobody
doesn't, it
has it
doesn't,
easy.
no, it
It's
doesn't
not
end.
easy.
The number of commas doesn't change the level of suffering.
Scott Galloway does an amazing job at explaining this,
Right.
and he talks about, you know, north of a certain amount of income, like that, like the happiness does not continue to increase. The ease in which you move through your life does not increase. North of a certain amount of money, like yes, look,
No, we've
resources
talked about that. There's very clear
resources
research,
make
right?
things easier, but only to a point.
From zero, right, to whatever the number is. Let's call it $80,000. From zero to $80,000, every dollar more is, an equal amount of increase in, happiness. But there is some magical number and it shifts over time where that is no longer a linear process, right? The felt change in your life experience between $100,000 and $200,000, despite the fact that it's twice the level of income, it is a marginal improvement or change in your felt sense of happiness or success or effectiveness or impact or however you want to characterize your, wealth goals. Um, you know, that was very clear research. Now that number has shifted over time in terms of what that means. Um, but past or beyond a certain threshold, the goals that you have, the future state that you have, and the challenges that you feel, the obstacles between current state and future state, you know, the number of commas on the piece of paper of the financial statement don't affect the felt sense of frustration, anger, shame, betrayal, obstacle. It's the same, right? High performance mindsets beyond a certain level of performance are the only difference maker.
100%. And so the question then is, how do I lean more in? Right? How do I become more invested in me? How do I become more invested? How do I become more willing to do the things that are hard? How do I, and this is where flow state comes in. This is
Yeah.
where shutting down that prefrontal cortex, getting rid of that sort of that self-referential, those stories, the narratives. This is where, and it looks like self-care, and it looks like exercise, and it looks like good sleep, and it looks like meditation. It looks like, from this guy's perspective, it looks like nervous system regulation as the master key that opens every single door past it. It opens the key to abundance. It opens the key to communication. It opens the key. It's the key that opens relational happiness. It opens the key to community happiness, creativity, productivity, all of these things. Because when we can regulate our nervous systems at will, right, as our default response to stress, as our default response to I don't want to, or as our default response to this is scary times, as our default response to, oh, like I just got an email that kind of shook my sense of security. If my next step is to regulate my nervous system, and I practice this enough that it becomes my default, then I am defaulting to a high performance set of skills every single time. I am not defaulting to my sympathetic nervous system where I lose access to my neocortex. I lose access to executive functioning, long range planning, problem solving, what is socially acceptable, impulse control. And it looks like, when we have access to our executive functioning in a time when other people lose access to theirs, we look like we have a superpower,
Right.
right?
Right. No, I had an interesting conversation last week. We had a speaker come in who is a writer, author, spent time in the Navy SEAL community as a leader. Um, and we talked about this, the strategies the tactics and strategies that they apply in the moment, right? You may have a well thought out strategy that you're going to apply when something goes sideways. But, how do you create the context where you can access it and successfully apply it at that time? Right. To some degree, we talk about this in the financial planning or managing your investments, right? If you love XYZ company at $100 a share and you've bought it, right? If it drops to $70 a share, right? That process can trigger a bunch of reactions and emotions and mental states that, despite the fact that you said ahead of time, if it drops in value, I'm going to buy more. My strategy, my tactics, I have a plan. If the value of this particular stock goes down, I'm going to buy more. You need a set of tools right before that you are practiced in applying, so that when it happens, you don't trigger your fear response and fail to apply the strategies that you said you wanted to apply.
Right.
You got to knit together both the behaviors that you want to apply with the tactic the intervention, right, that you're going to practice, so that when it happens, you've got a gap of enough time that will allow you to re-engage and move forward and apply your strategy, even if you are now still frustrated, angry, scared, nervous, but you're at a 6 and not a 11.
Right. And so the
Nervous system regulation as a tool or set of tools, right? Or an outcome of a set of tools if you've learned and practiced to apply, right? Once it happens.
Right. So now this is a really challenging, problematic situation that is happening to a lot of people. I just watched the value of my thing drop, right? But what's not happening is my body is not responding as though there's a wolf in the room with me, which means I snap into fight or flight. I lose access to my neocortex. I lose access to my executive functioning, and I go sell everything immediately. Stop the loss, right? And it's that. And when everything goes south, and you're the one who goes buy more, right? When you're the one who experiences the loss and doesn't feel as though there's a wolf in you're the one who looks like they got their stuff together. You're the one who looks like the calmest person in the room, and it looks like a superpower to everyone who's freaking out. For you to go, oh right, oh that's bad, yeah, buy more, you know, and it looks like you're now psychic. It looks like all this stuff, and it's not. It is learned, practiced, exercised, diligent, disciplined nervous system management, right? And we can apply, and which is the key to high performance. When everything tells me there's a wolf in the room, if I can stop and go, there's actually no wolf in this room, make decisions that don't include there's a wolf in the room, go, right? And when we begin with the first set of questions, right? What are the stories that trigger the behaviors that create the outcomes so that I can have different outcomes if I'm willing to change the behaviors, if I'm willing to change the stories, so that when on the other side things happen, things go awry, I want to remain in this super high performance mindset. I don't want, little things to throw me off. When things go sideways, I don't lose track of the I don't lose track of the goals. This is how we stay in high performance mindset. When I stay in an abundance mindset, that just means, the bottom just dropped out of the market. Oh, you mean all the things that I love are now on sale? Dope.
Yep. We use that term a lot in investing. That's a dope stock. It's a
Right.
dope investing opportunity.
My
Yeah.
my Gen X is showing. I apologize.
At least, we're not saying is going to, the negative stuff just gags me with a spoon. There's
Right.
5 generations.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I feel like I've answered my 2 questions, which is how do you take a good inventory?
Right. What does complete discovery look like?
Right? What is
What is
complete
a what
discovery?
is a well what is a well executed discovery look like? Like what pieces
And
of information do I
and
end
then
with?
tied to the so what, right?
Right.
If I'm going to go through this uncomfortable process and starts to surface things that maybe I've got judgment around, why should I care? Right? What's in it for me to go through that process? So what's in it for me is I can tie that to a set of outcomes, right? That I can decide and start to work on that, you know, choose the effectiveness level of those outcomes, that some of that linked together in an effort to build my strategies such that when things are going sideways, outcomes are changing, disruption shows up, I've got a series of strategies that I can start to build to apply to be ready and resilient to real life, right? That the real life is not going to go the way we had expected, um, and head in that direction. So
Right.
that's the so what.
Yeah, and this is where we link to sort of like Jocko Willink radical responsibility. If I accept responsibility for absolutely everything in my life, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever, that means that nobody else needs to change in order for the quality of my life to change. If I accept responsibility for all of it, that means that whatever happens is about my attitude toward the things that happen. I get to choose it. If all of my problems are of my own creation, that means nobody else has to change. The world doesn't need to be different in order for me to be well, healthy, or okay. I get to affect that, and I alone get to affect. That's high performance.
That makes sense to me. All right. Well, then what did we miss? I don't think we missed anything in this particular story.
No, that's the deal. If we are willing to if we are willing to go into complete discovery without judgment, then look at what we found also without judgment, and then ask the question, is the way that I am doing things working? And if it's not, how do I optimize them? Then all of a sudden we can move into high performance states, high performance belief systems, high performance behaviors without like infecting them with a bunch of weird judgment.
Yeah. The extra judgment is not helpful, right? The extra energy, right? The
It's just a loss of bandwidth.
right. The shame loop around your stories is itself its own defense mechanism, right? Its own resistance issue.
Keeps us
Right.
small, keeps us from changing, right? Because if I'm not handling this well, how am I going to handle that catastrophic failure? Oh, it's a good one, John. I like this. I could talk about this all day. I love this stuff. I love talking about how to set down old bullshit, and whether we're talking about being unlucky in love, being a good dad, a bad dad, being a, a, a high performance operator or an investor or business owner, entrepreneur, CEO, like being able to take a calm and non-judgmental look at my truth, like what my current state is, and then make really good adjustments to that based on the outcomes I want. And this is the zone I like to play in all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. The stories are powerful and sticky, right? Coming up with ways to continue to intervene on those stories over long periods of time or reduce their hold is also part of that work, right? And nervous system regulation and applying those tools to de-energize those stories in some capacity, um, such that the effort that we put to our goals, right, our work bouts that we can wrap at flow states and be productive or pointed in the direction of our desired future state with less likelihood of going sideways, right? Less likelihood to be pointed in the wrong direction or resisted or unsuccessful.
And more resilient when they do go sideways, because not everything works perfectly all the time forever, right? The idea that it might go sideways is no longer a deterrent to keeping going. What if this goes totally sideways?
It
Well, then
will.
it's going to go sideways and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I live in
Yeah.
an abundant universe that is actively conspiring in my favor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea, there is that tension. Like, why do we build a plan? As soon as we build a plan, we know it's wrong. It'll be wrong in some capacity, right? And it's going to surprise us in a very important and substantive way. And there's all sorts of examples of stories or colloquialisms that people use about that reality. And that's not to say that you shouldn't then have a plan. Like everybody has a plan until they're hit in the mouth by,
Iron Mike.
my Iron Mike. Um, you know, that your war plan survives only to first contact with the enemy, right? I mean, it's every process, and that's not then permission to operate plan free, right? The gap that the plan fills is your ability to plan, build resilience for the strategies you're going to apply when you're surprised. Where's your capacity, your margin for the surprise that's going to come up, right? Your war plan, there will be surprises around weather, around details on the ground, around intelligence, around the capabilities of, some of those stories of the missions where the helicopter breaks down, like, stuff just goes sideways, right? And you build your plan so that you know what strategy you're going to apply when you are surprised.
Right. Yeah. And dealing with high performers, that's one of the things that we talk about. Cool. Here's the plan. Great. When everything goes south, then what? Right? When it all goes south, what are you gonna do? Right? When
Some of the beauty of both of our practices is not when things are going well, but when everything has come crashing down.
then who are you? What does that mean? How do you show up? What is your next step? How do you operate in that situation? And it is really sort of determinative of who we are. I had a buddy who used to say, it's not faith when you have $80,000 in the bank. It's not faith, right? It's only faith when you're down to your last five. You're not sure where rent's coming from,
Right.
right? It's not faith when you have $80,000 in the bank. It's not resilience when everything is hitting, right? When it's not resilience when everything is just lining up and falling down the way they should. It's resilience when everything goes sideways and you're still operating not in a checked out way, but you're still operating in a way as if everything was still hitting. You're just moving, making lateral moves. You're shifting things the way they need to move. You're responding to the hits, but not in a frightened or beaten way. Just no, we knew something was going to go wrong. We just didn't know what it was, but we were prepared for something to go wrong, right? the idea that nothing was gonna throw this off course is an
both
absurdity.
can be true, right?
Right.
There's this total quality management. There's this production, process for removing errors in a system. Six Sigma, I think, was the reference from the 80s and 90s, right? Six Sigma was a distribution, right, where, right, there's a average amount of errors, right, or mistakes or defects in a system, right? Could you get 6 standard deviations from a count standpoint away from average, right? So if you had 5, 5 faults or mistakes or, errors in the system, 6 standard deviations, the implication is an error would never happen, right? So yes, you could, and in many instances, when we're talking about life or death situations, we must, right, build systems that eradicate error and variance and mistakes and we still have to hold in our head the same competing thought that the surprise is still going to occur, right? The airline pilot has a 5-page checklist of hundreds of things to make sure that the errors associated with flying a plane are near zero, but it's near zero, right? How do we build the process such that when the surprise happens, we still have a set of tools to apply, right, to be as successful as possible landing the plane, right, in high consequence environments. And we should think about wealth in the same way as a high consequence environment, right? This is, we can build the process in such a fashion that we can wring out errors in your approach to, as little as possible, where you're executing with expected results. And there will still come a time when surprises are going to creep in. And you got to be able to keep both concepts in your mind at the same time. 100p. All right, man. Fucking crushing it. Way to go.
Have a beautiful day. Thanks for listening to the Flow of Money podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about John and Dave at theflowofmoneypodcast.com. If you liked this episode, share it with someone who's ready to step into flow. If you're interested in sponsorship or collaboration, we'd love to hear from you. See you next time.
Hey, before you go, this is John O'Dea here for the quick note. I am affiliated with Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and my investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. Dave Gieselman, my partner, is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services. Any opinions are mine and Dave's. These opinions are not necessarily those of Raymond James. Every investor situation is unique, and you should consider your investment goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon before making any investment decisions. Neither Raymond James Financial Services nor Raymond James Financial Advisors render any tax advice. Tax matters should be discussed with your tax advisor. This podcast is for investor education purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment advice. Consult your investment advisor before making investment decisions.